Have you ever faced something that felt overwhelming, but breaking it into smaller steps made it manageable? That's the power of stage desensitization. While it's often associated with overcoming phobias, this step-by-step approach is a powerful tool for many challenges, whether it be coping or adapting to sensory processing difficulties, but even trust building and change management. Today we'll explore what stage desensitization is, why it works, and how it can be applied to so much more than you might expect. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Able to Care podcast with your host, Andy Baker. So today we're going to be talking about a concept or a process called stage desensitization. Now it has come under other names and things like chunking and things like that, but it's a basic premise of it's a gradual process of exposing somebody to a feared or challenging situation, but in small, manageable steps. So the idea is simple. By starting small and building confidence at each stage, we reduce fear or resistance over time. It's like climbing a ladder, one rung at a time, rather than trying to leap to the top. We all understand that concept. There's a famous kind of joke. Is it a joke? I don't know. But the how do you eat an elephant or one bite at a time? It's exactly the same kind of concept. It was originally developed for the psychology in treating phobias, but see, stage desensitization, I found lots of different uses and broader kind of adaptations to the whole process. Now, I first came across stage desensitization as a concept, as a term, when I was training in cognitive behavioral therapy. But I actually came across it much earlier in life where, one of my mentors, a guy called Jeff Thompson, who's actually been on the podcast, in one of his books, which was kind of looking at overcoming fear, he did what was called a fear pyramid. And in this fear pyramid, you wrote down all the things you were frightened of, from the thing you were least afraid of at the bottom of the pyramid to the thing you were most afraid of at the top of the pyramid. And then basically you slowly started working through those different fears, overcoming them, starting at the bottom and slowly your working way up the top. Now, each of those steps on that pyramid, if you like, were then broken down into a separate pyramid itself. So each of those then you would chunk down. So if it was overcoming a phobia of spiders, for instance, you may not just kind of jump straight into holding a spider in your hand and going, I've done that now. You may need to go through a gradual process of overcoming that phobia itself, which is the stage desensitization. Now, I actually went through this process. I actually did this, and it was one of the things that kind of changed my life. Because what it allowed me to do is it built my confidence in being able to overcome challenges and fears in my life. So suddenly, as I was getting towards the top of this pyramid of the things that then really scared me, they didn't really scare me anymore because I knew I could handle it. I knew I could cope with it. I'd done it however many times before in things I was scared of. So I was building my confidence. And this is where it's so important as far as when we're looking at concepts of stage desensitization, they may seem like minor steps. They may not seem like a big deal, but the more we can get people to push their comfort zone, step outside their normal boundaries, cope with the things that they're scared to do, it builds resilience. Self-esteem doesn't come from just feeling good about yourself. It comes from mastery. It comes from overcoming challenges. It comes from successes that you can then go, hey, I've done that once. I can do that again. So little concepts like this stage desensitization, whether you're applying it for yourself, whether you're doing it to support a team, whether you're looking after somebody, whether it be a child or an adult, this is such an important concept to kind of introduce and work with people on. Now, obviously, we should always ideally, have their consent and it should be a collaborative effort of building this process. But this is a way we can get started. It's something we can kind of work with people to build. So let's look at why it works. The approach leverages two main key principles, really. The first is this gradual exposure. So by starting with low intensity steps, the process feels less overwhelming. A bit like tidying a room, if I look at it all in one go, it's like I can never get this tidy. But if I just start in a corner and just do one little job and then slowly start spreading that across, before I realize it, the whole room is tidy. It's exactly the same thing. It's like a good example when I was writing my book. If I just looked at like writing the book as a whole, it's really intimidating. So I broke it down. Well, let's just see if I can do one really good paragraph. And then let's see if I can do the second paragraph and then just repeat. It's the same thing. Like you don't focus on just writing the whole book. You start off on just writing a paragraph, writing a sentence, writing a word. Maybe all I can cope with to start off with, but it's a step in the right direction. If I could do one word, I can do 2 words. If I could do 2 words, I could do 3 words. If I could do 3 words, I could do 4, etc. This gradual exposure allows me to kind of get used to things in a way that feels manageable for me. And this is where it's a benefit is it can be very personalized, as we'll talk about in a second. But each success reinforces the idea that the challenge is manageable. So it builds confidence over time as well, which reduces fear or resistance over time. As I said, if I could do it once, I can do it again. So one, it feels like a smaller bite to take. It's more manageable. And second is it slowly builds my confidence, making it easier the further up the kind of the ladder or the pyramid or whichever kind of way we present these different stages that we're going to work on. So the concept is about replacing fear or discomfort with familiarity and confidence. And the beauty of this method is it meets people where they are rather than necessarily forcing them into situations they're not ready for. So let me give you an example. Let's say overcoming a phobia of spiders, for instance. I had a friend who was so terrified of spiders that she wouldn't even go out on Halloween or go into shops at Halloween because they had like fake spiders around and she couldn't cope. So imagine kind of going, well, we're going to do immersive therapy where you're just going to hold a spider in your hand and get over it. That would have been overwhelming and potentially traumatic for her. She wouldn't have been able to cope. She wouldn't have engaged with it, wouldn't have ever got consent. Therefore, it was never going to happen. So we start at the very beginning, which was at a minute, she can't even cope with seeing like fake spiders, but can she cope with looking at spiders maybe in a book? And we start there. Maybe we just look at pictures of spiders in the book and she keeps doing that maybe once a day, maybe a few times a day until she can cope. Until it's a case of, I can look at spiders in a book now. That doesn't stress me out. That doesn't upset me as much as it did before. And then we can move on to the next step. So rather than kind of starting where we want the end to be, going to overcome the fear of spiders, we start right at the basic, the lowest possible level we can think of, and start building the confidence there. Maybe even just a case of, if she can't even look at pictures of spider in a book, maybe she looks at drawn picture spiders and basic picture spiders and slowly kind of moves through these different stages to overcome. Now, one of the reasons this works, I said it's about replacing the fear. It's about kind of almost rewiring the brain. Okay. So let's take a different example from spiders. Let's say we've got somebody who's terrified of dogs. Okay. To the point that it's actually impacting them that they can't go out for walks because they're scared of seeing dogs. And this is where, phobias are irrational fears by definition. If I'm scared of sharks and I'm swimming in the Great Barrier Reef, it's a perfectly legitimate fear. But in Skegness, it may be a case of, well, that seems a little irrational. So if I'm unwilling to go in the water because of sharks in Skegness, well, that's then maybe more of a phobia rather than a genuine legitimate fear. But it's the intensity. Maybe little things don't matter. I don't like spiders, But if it stops me from being able to go into places, go into shops, go out at certain times of year, then it's impacting my quality of life. So when we're looking at behavioral management, when we're looking at is there a legitimacy for changing this behavior, well, is it impacting on their ability to achieve their outcomes, to get what they want in life, to achieve everything they want to? And if you are finding these are things for you, if anything is ever holding you back, this is something you need to overcome. Because again, it builds that confidence of, I can overcome this, I can overcome anything. So let's use the example of dogs. So we might say this person's terrified of dogs. So we might, again, a bit like the spider example, we look at pictures of a dog until they can cope. Then watching a video of a calm dog until they can cope. Standing near a leashed dog at a distance until they can cope. Being in the same room as a dog until they can cope. And then gently interacting with a dog until they can cope. Now, we might need to break those steps into smaller. So it might be kind of, getting closer to the dog first and things like that. But that's just some examples, okay? And at each step, we do it until we can cope. Then we push the boundary to the next one. Constantly, slowly expanding that comfort zone, building our confidence, building our resilience and our self-esteem as far as, hey, I did that. I can do a little bit more. Now, the other thing with this, it isn't just about this confidence and self-esteem and this kind of ability. We're actually rewiring the brain. The brain does weird things, especially in things like fear responses. In so much as if I'm scared of spiders and I see a spider and I run away, my brain then kind of reinforces itself to kind of go, hey, you didn't get hurt. So running away must be the right thing to do. So then it reinforces itself to go, that's the correct behavior. So it wires that in going, when you see a spider, run. If, however, you saw a spider and you killed it, the brain would go, hey, it didn't hurt you. That must be the right thing to do. So it kind of programs your brain to respond that way. If you froze on the spot, it did the same thing. And this is the challenge, is that your brain tells you this must be the right thing because nothing bad happened because you did that thing. What it doesn't understand is that the alternatives, what would have happened if you'd done anything different? So let's say, rather than running away, rather than killing it, or rather than freezing, you just picked it up in your hand and nothing bad had happened, then your brain would then go, oh, nothing bad happened. That must be the okay thing to do. This is what we need to try and rewire. But we're not going to go straight in at holding the spider. We're going to do it in this staged process. Okay, so step 1, step 2. Okay, now when we're looking at phobias then, the concept of phobias is irrational fears. But let's expand the concept of fear generally. So human motivators, fear is one of the biggest human motivators, love and fear, okay, or attachment and fear. All of the kind of elements that we have around fear, we can utilize a similar stage desensitization. Now, let's think of other things that people might be scared of, for instance, or find difficult and a challenge. And one is change. So change can make a person feel overwhelmed. They feel out of control. They feel like they don't know what's coming. It's a fear of the unknown. Is this going to be okay? Is this going to work? So we can use a similar concept of stage desensitization to help a person to cope and manage with change. Can we do incremental, slow changes? Rather than, let's say, we're moving a person to a new location or doing transitions, for instance. Can we give them warning about the transition? Can we help them and give them information about the transition? Can we allow the transition to occur in small incremental steps? So let's say, they're going to live somewhere new. Well, could they go and stay in this place for just a few days to start off with, then a few weeks, and then a few months, and build it up over a period of time so it doesn't just feel so overwhelming in one day? If we change a routine, a bit like changing schools, for instance, doing that day where they just get to go along and spend. This is a challenge for many kids, isn't it? It's a case of you are here next year or in a couple of months' time, you go to this whole new place. You've got to learn everything. If there was a better way of transitioning between the two, getting some more information in advance, we might find anxiety levels reduced as a result of that. As long as, again, the person has this ability to be able to cope with each step in that transition. They're successful in that transition. So if you're thinking about whether it be managing a team, if you're, a care manager, or whether it be, helping a person to overcome a transition or a change, think about how can I break this transition down? How can I give them autonomy over it? How can I allow them to move step by step through the process and allow them to kind of get used to the idea of the transition? And it's a similar concept to your staged desensitization. This is also when we're thinking about change and thinking about fear, we also can bring that into the concept around trust and building relationships and connections. Most of us don't just meet a person and become their best friend. But I think for many of us within certain care responsibilities or care roles, we sometimes feel there's a real importance that you need to trust me straight away because I need to look after you and I need to take care of you. We have to recognize that trust builds over time. Therapeutic relationships build over time. So exactly the same concept of stage desensitization. They need to desensitize to you. They need to recognize that you are potentially safe, and you do it by slowly integrating, interacting, and including yourself into their life, but you do it in small, manageable steps. This is going to be very much based on the person. It all depends on how trusting they are, how your relationship is, how you connect, and things like that. So always a case of don't rush the person. We can do it in small steps. So start spending a bit more time with them incrementally rather than kind of jump in and going, hey, we're having a full day together. It very much should be a person-centered or a child-centered kind of way of approaching this. Now, the last one, as far as where stage desensitization could be really useful, is in a similar way. When we are very young, as far as sensory processing is concerned, we're high level of defensiveness and low level of discrimination. In the fact that when we're babies, we don't know what is and what isn't dangerous. So therefore, every noise could be a potential threat. Every new object could be a potential danger to us. So although we all interact with it, there might be this kind of this anxiety, this nervousness. And this is over a period of time, though. I keep touching that thing. It doesn't hurt me. Therefore, I know it's safe to touch. That sound I keep hearing, that's a doorbell. And good things seem to happen because nice people come and say hello and bring me things and show me love. So actually, the doorbell's a nice sound, not a dangerous sound. And that's where we're developing our discrimination abilities, that the fire alarm, the smoke detector is a bad sound, but the doorbell is a good sound. That's building discrimination, to be able to tell the difference between things and the similarities between things. So by the time most children are starting school, they have a higher level of discrimination abilities than defensiveness. They've got quite a lot of experience to know what isn't and what isn't safe. One of the challenges for individuals with sensory processing disorders and difficulties is they may not be able to discriminate in the same way, or they may not habituate. And habituate is where you get used to something. So like the first bang at a firework display makes you jump, but the second, third, and fourth one don't. So these are the two concepts that may impact on somebody with sensory processing. The challenge is that it's not that I can't desensitize to it, but I just may take an awful lot longer to develop that ability. I might need to build trust towards certain things. So if I struggle with I'm overstimulated with sensory input, we might find that therefore certain materials cause me pain and discomfort because my brain tells me it's painful. My brain tells me it's something bad. But I can trust this particular object because I've had this from a very young age and I've kind of accepted that this is okay. So I then use this object to touch everything else. So I can cope with certain tactile input depending on where the sensory difficulties are. So we can use a similar stage desensitization principle. Like if I only trust this one shirt, for instance, you buy me a new shirt, I'm probably not going to trust that shirt. I don't want it. I don't want to touch. This is the one I trust. This is predictable. I know I can cope with this. I know it feels nice. So why would I want any other? So introducing that shirt may be a case of it's just going to cause a meltdown just trying to get me to wear it. So maybe I need to get used to that new shirt. Maybe it just needs to be in the room, me allowing to look at it, to engage in it, to be around it without it causing me any distress. A bit like the kind of spider concept. Then maybe a bit closer to me, maybe allow me to touch it, maybe engage. And you could do this with food and things like that as well. Like trying to force kids to eat something they're scared of eating. Is it going to make them eat it? So we might allow them to just touch it, engage in it, do some food play to get used to the kind of the object, that it isn't a stressful thing. It isn't a nasty thing. It's something they can engage with safely. So the same concepts we have for overcoming a phobia, we can also use to help somebody overcome, whether it be change, whether it be trust, whether it be sensory processing difficulties. So let me give you a little concept to finish off. So I've used this in a kind of a principle as far as, let's say, helping a lad get ready for a haircut, for instance. So let's say you've got somebody on the autistic spectrum, and you know that just going to a new hairdresser is going to be overwhelming for them, and it's going to cause a meltdown because it's just going to be too much, too frightening, too scary. So rather than just going, hey, we're going to haircut, it may require a little bit of planning. Okay, so let's just walk past that hairdresser's until we can cope. Maybe just go in and sit in the waiting room until he can cope. Maybe see if the hairdressers will lend us one of the aprons to take home to get used to the smell and get used to the sensation. Maybe we can get some sounds of scissors to allow him to get used to it without any harm occurring until he can cope. How does he cope with his hair being touched? Can we do that and introduce that until he can cope? We don't want to cause him distress, but doing those small manageable chunks, rather than it just being this whole new thing, we can slowly introduce and allow this person to build their confidence of going, hey, I can do this. I can cope with this. So there is lots of different ways that we can use this stage desensitization. What makes this approach so adaptable at its core is about breaking big challenges into manageable steps, which all of us tend to do naturally all the time, but creating opportunities for successes along the way with other people. So whether it's overcoming fear, managing a transition, building a relationship, this method respects individuals' limits while also fostering growth. And that's what we always want to kind of do. It's about understanding and getting where they are, but also promoting positive outcomes, positive change and growth. It's not just about achieving a specific goal. It's about cultivating overall resilience, confidence, and trust in themselves and their ability to kind of manage and deal with things. A few tips to finish us off. Always start small. Begin with the least intimidating and challenging step, and success builds a foundation for that next stage. Go at people's pace, whether it be yours or theirs, whoever's overcoming this challenge. Every small win is a big deal. Acknowledging that process but not rushing the process is really important. So ensure you are patient. Some people will make change quicker than others. Some people will build trust quicker than others. So, and offer support, whether it's reassurance, guidance, or simply being present. Your role as a supportive partner in the process is absolutely crucial. It's a collaborative approach. It's not you enforcing it on somebody else. It's working together to expand and positive outcomes for all. So stage desensitization reminds us of the power of small incremental steps, whether we're facing fear, navigating change, or fostering trust. It's about making the journey feel possible, not overwhelming. It teaches us that growth doesn't happen in leaps. It happens one step at a time. Remember, progress is progress, no matter how small. Each step forward is a step worth celebrating. Thank you for listening. Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behavior that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behavior can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later, wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature, and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict, and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviors that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behavior. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience, and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviors in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities, or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation, and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.